Just a crazy week going in. So we have RSA and I'm on the security ISV team. And so all of our customers and all of their executives are RSA. I actually don't know what RSA stands for, but I think it was a company. It's the RSA conference in San Francisco. So I'll be out there next week. And then kind of the counter to that is Black Hat and Amazon. So AWS, we stopped doing, it's not that I speak for, but Amazon stopped doing their reinforced conference. So there's no more, so they're going back to investing in RSA, and then Black Hat is kind of the technical counterbalance to that. But all of my customers are there with their executives, but then those executives want to meet with their customers. So it's this like nightmare of like herding cats to scheduling things, and then our office. So my leadership's at our office back to backs, and then their leadership's at a rented space back to back, and it's only it's less than a mile away. But like if you're in 20 meetings a day, like you lose, like if you leave your space, you just lose a whole slot, because it's 15 minutes to get there, 30-minute meeting, 15 minutes to get back, right? So if you're doing that, like your productivity gets cut in half. So yeah, it's been crazy. It's crazy. And that
Yeah.
plus like I was mentioning a little bit was just all the executive meetings, which ended up going well. But it's just kind of like a high pressure, at least for me, like I put a lot of pressure on myself, because you want those to go really well, like white glove it. And it's just mentally, like I've just found myself, I was ready for the weekend, like Tuesday night. Like it was fucking intense. So
Yeah. And how long are you in for?
not even 3 days. I need to move my flight back, because we booked a meeting with the chief revenue officer in my leadership on Wednesday, and my flight's at 4. The meeting's at 2:30. So if I leave the city at 3:15, like, and then I've heard nightmares about TSA lines. So yeah, I'm probably, hopefully I can get a non-middle seat flight back, because that's a long ass flight, 4 hours to Dallas.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
nice. Oh, fun times.
but it's been a business. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I mean, you mentioned like drafting proposals. And so what, what, and you've shared it before, but you guys are allowed to use GPT internally, or is it like Bedrock? Like what can you do to help you?
So we have Quick Suite, which is powered by a number of models, but they don't actually share. But you've got kind of fast, smart, like extended thinking. Smart is balanced, and then fast. And then we have, as we have our own Isengard account, so we have access to any AWS infrastructure. So I've got a tool that I can interact directly with the models. I just installed Claude Code that was sanctioned, and so I can play around with that. Yeah, so kind of a number of tools, not, but the best web search tool for me is Quick Suite.
Got it. And did you leverage that at all to help like draft proposals or just like draft narratives?
I don't draft proposals per se. The deal is run by a specific team, because it's a commitment. It's a
Okay.
commitment based deal. So they've got all the, and we're it's all via email right now. They're in, yeah. So without getting into how the sausage
Yeah.
is made, yeah, it's just a lot of, right now it's just heavy expectation management, stakeholder management, trying to get the right people, and get, like, it's a whole orchestration of a complex deal cycle in B2B. And they're all, I don't know, it's basically like a kind of like a video game in a way. So if you can detach yourself, it's kind of interesting. And luckily you get paid for it, at the end. At least that's the hope. But yeah, if sometimes you can get wrapped around the axle, and it just feels like a fucking grind. So,
Yeah.
but so
Nice.
just a couple of the headlines here we've been going back and forth with, right? So I was curious, like, so Anthropic launched freaking, or Cowork Dispatch, which is like, I don't even know. It's kind of like you can talk to it while you're away or something, and then channels. So like you can integrate with Telegram. So like all these features that just kind of like kick out OpenClaw in a way, but you can't do it
Yeah.
on the console. Like, so it's interesting. I was curious on that. We saw Jensen Wong videos talking about, more jobs, like people that are firing companies for AI, lack of creativity. I thought that was interesting. I don't think people are firing because of AI, maybe Block, but otherwise, it just feels like there's a lot of fat in the systems. Anthropic launched a 100 million investment in their partner network, which I thought was interesting. OpenAI, the Wall Street Journal article on that about we need, essentially like eliminating side quests and really focusing on nailing their core product. And I guess what in this era of AI doom and gloom and no jobs, I find it really interesting that, they're not saying like, hey, Claude Code or Codex figured out an entire strategy. Like there's behind all of this, Wizard of Oz stuff is still people figuring out what the fuck we should do next. Which makes me warm in my belly these days. So
Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting. I mean, I think that goes with the one that I just sent, where it was like the consumption of your developers tokens is a reflection of how good your developer is.
yeah, with Jensen, just the numbers that we talked about, or he was talking about. If my $500,000 per year developer isn't spending half of his salary, so $250,000 on tokens, then I'm going to be pissed. And
Yes.
I get what he's saying, but I still like, you better be making more money, right? Like that's like,
I think that's like, yeah, I mean, I think that was my takeaway is like, I think he's thinking that is like going to be the productivity driver, right? Like, because his analogy was like if I hire an engineer or an architect and they bust out the paper graph and they're not using CAD, like, what are we
yeah,
doing here?
exactly. But when you had engineering talent as the bottleneck, you could loosely correlate or even causation probably code shipping, feature shipping, product shipping is more revenue, right? You're competing, but now that's not the bottleneck. We talk about this all the time in this era of perfect execution. Like you can, you can take your crappiest idea and suck a lot of time and energy out of the room and use credits, and it's worthless. Like I don't. The correlation kind of breaks in my mind. You're not guaranteed.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but you could challenge that. I mean, because that's a good analogy, but does it allow you to POC or experiment at a faster rate to then where you're not spending cycles? So like you have this new product idea or whatever that typically would take you, a quarter to stand up the team and then another like 2 or 3 quarters to roll it out. Like, is this a compression algorithm that then,
100%,
you know,
100% agree with you on that. I guess I would consider that more guardrails. So it's kind of interesting. We've talked about this before. You have all this non-deterministic agentic stuff happening and you want to hand it over to them. It's kind of goes off the rails. And so then you come back in and you put all these guardrails. So like it stays within the deterministic bounds is your business. So it's like, okay, well, that's great to your point, but it's like, okay, well, now we have to do more pre-vetting on our ideas. And now we have to do all these workshops before we pick the one we're going to go build. Like, it's like now you're just front loading all of your like bureaucratic process to make sure you don't waste time and energy, but you can move faster. So it's more important. So it's like, these are all just trade-offs in my mind. It's like, we just so often ignore the negative part of the trade-off with generative AI.
yeah. I mean, yeah, and even on that note, though, like calling it a trade-off or like the bureaucracy of like bringing certain things forward. I mean, maybe it is creating a new framework for how, let's just call it like how product is built or how things are, because I think we look at it through the lens of like, oh, this is how it's always been done, and so these were the
Yeah.
steps to get there. But now is it just like, okay, we're rewriting it? Because I was listening to an interesting like Bloomberg interview last night, and it was with one of the gentlemen that like predicted the Big Short. They were talking to him about AI, and they sort of just went on a tangent.
Steve
But
Eisman.
they were talking about, yeah, yeah, and they were talking to him, and it went on a tangent about like AI and like the future, and they basically said, well, yeah, we'll probably, the way the kids will be educated, or because there won't be these like entry level jobs, which you and I have talked about in the sense of like, you almost have to be a subject matter
Yeah.
expert, and then we'll need these like entry level analyst type jobs or whatever, but that either education through like, traditional like EDU will be teaching these new frameworks, or like you just go into companies and the framework exists? So I went on a bit of a tangent there, but what I'm saying is like, yeah, maybe we're thinking things are difficult because we're looking at it through the lens of how the current framework exists versus like what the new framework would be.
Yeah. So I think a great transition to, there's two things that the articles that came out this week. I sent you one, the A16Z, on how do you build a product team. So in the order, and then I just read this one this morning. I don't think I sent it to you. It's kind of a contrarian take, but soft skills are the new hard skills. So, when the infinite geniuses, and when the knowledge is at your fingertips, it's like, being able to synthesize data yourself, effectively storytate, emotionally regulate, you're building the muscle of compartmentalization. Like, those become the new hard skills, which is interesting. I know I'm biased here. Like, I can, because I my job, like, we're B2B sales. And so I thought that dovetailed well with kind of, why do you build, or how would you build an enterprise sales team, right? So B2B. So you hit your 100 million, you hit your, 200, 300 million, product-led growth. How do you do the barbell strategy on the other side, skip the mid-market and go to the Fortune 2000? And so that's what's cool. It's like, so you got to hire the right leader, chief revenue officer, then you hire your first account executive, then you hire an SA, then you hire, once you get your marquee customer or you're close to it, you hire your customer to success, and then you hire your DG to scale. And so, but that first hire is the most important. And a lot of founders, get your thoughts on this. They're like, well, we don't want to invest too early in product market. Like, we don't know if we have product market fit. So we're just going to get like a cheap resource. And then like, oh, because the product sells itself, or I'll be the sales rep as the founder or CEO. And like the article's like, don't fucking do that. That's a bad idea. Like, once you know you have product market fit, double down on a highly strategic CRO, and the rest go from there. And so the article, I think, was also a lot around crypto. So I'm curious what your thoughts are. So I feel like you're living this day to day too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my take on that article, and just knowing like the background of the person who wrote it, because I've, followed him for a few
Oh,
years,
cool.
and just knowing how the space operates, that article to me was like, oh, here's your, and I don't know if this is the right analogy, like, here's your life vest, or like, oh, here's the key to open the door. But like, a lot of the teams that he's talking to, because he was talking, you're hitting on that, to crypto, a lot of them aren't even there. And so what I mean by that is like, they're going to go build like an enterprise sales team, but they don't even have like a venture scale company. And
Oh,
what
wow.
I mean by that is like, because, and if you're seeing this, like, in people who are in the crypto Twitter space have been like posting this, like, there have been companies shutting down left and right over the last, like, just this year alone. And finally, one of them just came out the other day. I think it was Tally. And they were like, hey, we started the year, we were going to do this like token launch, and build and continue to build. We've been here for 4 years. But then we took a big step back and took a breath and realized, after talking to people and us doing like some self-actualization, we don't have a venture-backed business. And so we're just going to call it,
We're just going to close
you know,
doors.
we're just,
It was a good run.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's true too. Cause there's been a few others like that already this year too, that have raised significant. And I think one of them gave back the majority of what they raised, but it was like, yeah, like, I guess you could pretend and be like, go and hire a bunch of people and just burn through capital and then be like, oh, it didn't work. Or like, recognize that your product just isn't enterprise grade and it's not going to ever be a, venture
Yeah,
business.
your TAM. I guess the TAM just wasn't big enough, or there wasn't enough of a need or something to get your couple percentage points of the market that would make the returns work. I mean, that you don't hear those stories very often. About basically people being mature enough to say, look, we got it wrong, or our assumptions were off. Here you go, rather than just like riding that ego wave and be like, no, we just got to go harder and faster. That's surprising, to be honest.
Yeah. And so to like, I went off on the tangent, but like, to my point on that is like, I think that article feeds a lot of like ego into, you know, the space that might not be, there just might not be that much product market fit for a lot of who his audience, who he's speaking to.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I saw a lot of parallels, right? So AWS had a little bit of like PLG, right, with developers, and then they really doubled down on their enterprise sales force. And just pulling some names from the Only CFO article this week, which is like about disrupting yourself. Like Clay, I don't know if he said Clay, but like Wix, which acquired Base 44, it had Intercom in there, and then he's got a bunch of other well-known Workday and other places, other SaaS companies, because that's what he's talking about. I I don't know. They scaled revenue so quickly, but VCs are so hungry because they want their quote unquote 1000x return on their one portfolio company to make everything else, the numbers work. And so that they can go to invest, raise more and say, look how amazing I am. But it, these companies are getting to 100 million pretty cheaply, right? Because they found product market fit pretty quickly. But then you also hear the churn rates are pretty sizable too. So there's people spending money, but it's kind of a leaky bucket. And so the enterprise build out, right? You get bigger customers, longer contracts. If there's a fit, to your point, I guess my whole comments here is more on the newer wave of AI native companies. The whole premise around platforms was kind of the network effects that I took away from a class was like, yeah, they're really powerful once you get them. But typically what you see is the velocity it takes to get a platform is also the same velocity you can lose a platform at by adoption. And so if you go from 0 to 1 million users in a day, it's also, you can do that from 1 million to 0 in a day or two, if that makes sense. So, I guess my analogy here is if it was that fast to ramp the revenue, like it can, and build your quote unquote platform, you could probably lose it pretty quickly. And I know that's a little bit of a reach, as I just painted a broad brushstroke over the whole fucking
Yeah.
industry, but I think there's merit there, and the whole only the paranoid survive. We really don't know how many of these companies are going to be around, in 5 years, right? Like, is OpenAI going to eat them? Is Anthropic going to eat them? Is Google going to buy them, right? Or Salesforce? So, I don't know. There's still the pie for software. I don't know, has gotten that much bigger, unless you consider like taking out costs. But then that also precludes the assumption that you're not going to keep these people on, which I don't think is right either. So I don't know, it's messy out there, but
It is. Yeah. It is interesting too. And I mean, I think you mentioned Clay, but I don't think you were mentioning it in a sense to like put it in any of those buckets. But I think of teams like Clay and others. So, I'm using Cowork a lot now, frequently. And every day, honestly, I'm just even more amazed, like day after day. So, and I think I shared with you, I built a lead scoring dashboard to manage a pipeline. And I only did it on a sample population, but the amount that I was just actually just able to like naturally language, just like type out what, hey, yeah, this would be cool. And the fact that it did it and it enriched and it did like everything that like a Clay would do, it makes you think though, like, are these other software? And I know we've talked about this back and forth, like, oh, it's not a SaaS killer, but I think I think that the tools, like whether it's Claude or OpenAI or Gemini, I think they are like low-level SaaS killers. They're not going to kill like a Salesforce. I don't think it's going to come and take over my Salesforce, but a tool like a Clay or like an Apollo that's like trying to rebrand as we are like Apollo's like says, oh, we're an AI, agentic,
fund, aren't they a
you
private
know.
equity?
Oh, no, like Apollo, they do the
Oh,
data
okay.
enrichment, like leads, like,
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of the others.
I know what you're saying.
Um,
Yeah, the when you have that niche, and like it's your value sits between the eyeballs and the mouse keyboard and kind of like the screen. I totally agree, because it's so trend we're seeing is the whole bring your own key thing, right? So you've got the model providers arguing, and I swear I'll bring this back, but you got the Anthropic's saying, and the it's not the harness, it's the model, right? So that's in favor of the labs versus like the agent labs. So, you know, Claude Code is awesome, not because we orchestrated a bunch of shit on the back end, but because Opus 4.6 is amazing. And so, but then like Claude Code, Cursor, Glean, whatever you want, they all have these bring your own key options. So literally you can point at Amazon Bedrock and then just use that. And then what, and Codex comes out with a better model, a little different because Codex is, on the other platforms. But if it was Mistral or your open source weight models, you could just point it at that. Like literally it is an API call. So like, what is the moat for those things? Now, like that's one angle, right? And then you also have, the Claude codes and the coworks, and they can obfuscate like those features like you were talking about, where it's like what you would normally like want in a SaaS, but it's not quite there. And maybe that's because you exported the data and did it. But it's going to be interesting because like the moats have just gotten so shallow. And I think that layer is going to be interesting because this is a hypothesis. SaaS will survive and will be the 80%, but the last 20% will be like much more customized with tools like Cowork or things you build on top of those systems, which kind of like follows a whole system of record theory. But yeah, it's because I feel like that's your domain. Like you understand your business and what's going on day to day. And so then you can kind of like, they get you 80%, then you can get the last 20%, and a tremendous amount of value is created by you in that last 20%. So that was a long way to come back to, I agree.
Yeah. Oh, but it is good. I mean, yeah. It would be, I guess if I was running some smaller SaaS or like wrapper, yeah, maybe to your point that you should be leaning into more like how we work great with Claude.
Yeah.
Like, here's how to get the most out of us using
Kind of like
Claude,
Figma,
and try to,
like they did that code to
yeah,
canvas like that.
yeah, like don't displace us. Like here, we're going to show you how to like level up, right?
Yeah. That's
Like,
what I think it's Brian Balfour wrote. I think he's like the CEO of Forge or something. And it's like the whole phases is like you open it up, get all the people on there, you subsidize the compute, they get hooked on your platform, and then you slowly close it to your partners, and then you monetize it. So there's always risk. I mean, but then you look at the iPhone App Store. Apple's not in the business of making every app that anyone could ever think about, right? They're like, look, we got the core 80%, and then y'all go build whatever else you want, and you go after the long tail of the market. So maybe that's it. Like that long tail, is going to be served by either like a subset of like Claude Cowork tools versus instead of like just having one Salesforce, to rule them all or a HubSpot or whatnot. So, which is interesting. So I don't know if you've noticed some of the pricing changes. So we've definitely seen this, at least in the AI companies, this massive shift from the per seat price to kind of like a hybrid. So you pay for the platform, which could be per person. It could be a flat fee. It could be based on whatever, right? Like, number of kind of like a tiers and based on your usage. But that's kind of the core functionality. And then you have the more consumptive based bucket of data credits or clay credits or whatever credits. And you get kind of a pre-allocation. And then over that, if you're a power user, they charge you more. But then there's also the third bucket is you pay for the platform fee and then you bring your own key, which then you shift all that spend either directly to Anthropic, Gemini, OpenAI, or Microsoft or Amazon, right? So it's really fascinating for me to see that kind of evolution. And then it kind of makes me wonder, I've never considered myself a great software salesperson. There are people who are just really good at software and the business case and why it's going to improve. So a hypothesis for you, it's like, I wonder if like the talent pool in Databricks and Snowflake and Microsoft and Amazon and Google GCP, like, is that going to be set up to crush it with these new AI native companies? Because it's so much more usage based versus like seat based. And it's like, so which usage based goes into, then you have to be getting value from it. Otherwise you'll stop using it versus seat based. You're locked in for 36 months, whether or not you use the seat or not. And that's a future problem for a future rep. But yeah, I don't know. That's what I was thinking about this morning. Is like Doom and Quinn are going to rock the AI, Gen AI token sales because we understand usage based sales models.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on that note, the partner certification or the Claude, the Claude certification, it's only open to partners currently. But yeah, I think to your point, like, there is that, and maybe that's how they're building it is they will have, the sales, not the Salesforce, but just the knowledge teams that can go out there and sell it and help architect and show this is the solution,
Yeah.
right? Like,
For
got to get
the
the,
forward deployed engineers, right? Akin.
yeah, that, and like the solution, like, you had to get your solution architect at AWS, right? Like this is their solution architect.
It
So
is. I watched a couple of videos. I still got to go deeper on the best practices, but I'm also seeing that evolution on the adoption of Claude Code. So there's a marketing newsletter. I forget what it is, but she's a former CMO and had some recent articles. So the one, she took like her framework and created an MCP server out of it and kind of, I don't know that people are paying for that as much as like this is like an adopt our kind of approach, and maybe you subscribe to a different service. But then she's just walking through the day in the life of, and basically she's saying, talk to Claude Code, create a skills file, and those are your marketing skills. Use it every day. When something's off, you tweak it, you correct it, and then you tell it to update the skills file, reload it. But it's like that's all kind of like past looking. Like so you're taking everything we do today and you're saying do that. But like who's actually looking at like how do we redefine what we're doing in marketing based on all of these things shifting out in the world? Like that's why I still am so bullish on people are still going to be needed, because like you just automated the way we used to do it, but there's better ways to do it that have to be rethought from the ground up. And like I just feel like Claude is stuck in the past inherently, right? Or OpenAI, like just because they're trained and they're always kind of back looking instead of forward looking.
yeah, I mean, I think on that, like analogy I'll bring it back to is on that Bloomberg interview, and the host, she made the comment like, oh, you get this older workforce who are averse to like, playing with Claude or OpenAI and don't really see the benefit of it. But you have their counterpart, their 25-year-old counterpart, or somebody 21 who's like already spun up OpenClaw and understands like the magnitude, or like 10 steps ahead of how great this thing is and what they can do. So to your point, yeah, like the marketing analogy would be like, you need to have people who can sort of like look around multiple corners at once and then build those marketing like functions.
Yeah.
Or those marketing skills that you can deploy, because they're thinking bigger than just like, this is how we currently do it, or this is, how we would currently use it.
Yeah. I think that the gains are going to go to those with the highest agency. I know we've said that before. And I don't know. I just look at my week this week. And again, I live in my own life, doing my own job. So it's hard for me to kind of scale this out. And AWS, as you know, is such a different place. The scale we operate is so different. I only have 2 customers. But my week this week was, calling the vice president of procurement, calling the VP of alliances, setting up a meeting with a CTO and a CPO, working with people's EAs, coordinating with GMs, writing briefing. Like there's so few tasks that I could have given to an agent to do for me. And if I did it and I passed it off as my own and it was wrong, like it would have been bad. Like, the docs suck. They start talking the wrong points. They get blindsided by some contentious question. Like, those are the stakes are so much higher. And so I struggle with like, seeing these things kind of like just magically, take off and be self-perpetual machines running the world, even though they can code for 30 hours, but on their own. So I don't know. I'm just going to be bullish on the human race.
Yeah, I think on that note, there's something I was thinking about, and I was going to bring this up as like I don't know, a challenge, or just to like touch on. So I think we touched on like a week or two ago where I made the comment, like Matt Garman in one of like the internal, you know, interviews or something, that when I was at AWS, made the comment of like when he was a PM, he was doing one PR FAQ a day in, like each of Wheaties, and you run the mile a day type thing. And so I was thinking about that literally last night. I was like going to propose this like challenge, because I think to your point, like you said, well, there's not much I could pass off, or like, and I'm not saying that like you have these like blinders on, but I was like, okay, what is something like, if I wanted to use Claude Cowork every day in a manner outside of what I'm currently doing, but like have it go build something, whether it's Claude Cowork or Claude Code, but like a one a day challenge,
Yeah.
like, and try to like analyze what you're like, how you could apply it to your current daily operations, or even up or down scale of where like, hey, this would be something that like Claude could do.
Yeah. Like an automation challenge, kind of like pick one thing per day or per week that you don't want to do anymore. And how do you automate that?
Yeah, that, or just that you're like, this would be cool if it worked. Let me go POC it,
Yeah. It's,
and then document that as your like, your
yeah.
portfolio as
I
well.
like that. I like that. I'm also, so one thing we didn't really talk about, but I'm super keen to try is the Google's AI Studio, because they have such a integrated stack for development, especially on mobile and web. And so Firebase is something that is a backend database. So they mentioned, I think you sent it to me, kind of like pulling all of that together. So you've got, Gemini models, you've got Firebase. So I'm going to kind of do a bake-off between Claude on the app idea and Gemini to see kind of like what happens. Cause like the whole permissions issues, for me, it just comes down to like all these fucking paper cuts get me, man. Like, I'm just like, I don't want to do this shit. Like, but also I had my annual review this week, and one of the things my manager said is like, why you, I told you before, but like, you're doing too many people's jobs here. Like, you need to figure out how to delegate and get other people to like pull in the same direction for your one team versus just doing their job. So I think I just mentally just struggle with that. And which I think is, to your point, even makes it a better idea. Like a daily challenge of like, what am I going to automate today, or what am I going to build today? Probably need to, you could do it
Yeah.
at the end of this. So on the end of a Thursday, you pick what you're going to tackle Friday is probably the best way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't have to be like an app, right? Like, cause then I started to challenge myself on, and I was thinking about this on walking my dog, and I was like, like what's something that I want to know, or I put off because it would take a minute, or I have to go ask somebody for, like even those kind of like small things. And now this may be only applicable to me, but I would say to everybody, but like, so we have everything integrated with Claude now. So like all of the connectors, like Google Docs, Notion, Slack, all that. So, and like Amplitude, and like our revenue database. And so I can naturally language now, like talk to it, be like, hey, pull me the top 10 customers, da 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 da. Like who had the slowest growth, who is the biggest risers. And yes, it's not like going and building an app, but it's like stuff that would take a while, right? Just even doing that and just saying, hey, this is how cool it was.
Yeah. I think I agree. I was lamenting because like our systems at work, they don't, not all the data is connected. So part of it is that tension of security is job zero. So a lot of it's permission. And then being a bigger company, the roles are much more narrow than a
Yeah.
startup. But I think I said this last week. I was just like, hey, what was the database revenue for February 2026? And it gave me a number from 2022. I was like, like one that's just like that's so wrong. You should have just said I don't have the data. Like, you know? And then two is like, why don't you have the fucking data? Like we have all these data products. Like, what is happening? And it's like you don't need to train on it or store it. Just like tell me the number. I don't know, man. It's like, so I wish we had like those, like I would love to do more apps at work, but like you can't publish it for good reason. I can't publish it on the web. I can't make it domain accessible. And so like, which it's just the tension of enterprise and like startup move fast, right? And because like you could do so many cool things because you have access to the right data. So you kind of can be like your own little like general manager because you could just like tell everyone to go do whatever to get anything because you like have the hooks.
Yep.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And again, and so I may be in like a prime or better position than most to do the day one, like the daily
have
challenge,
you
but I think it's something.
tell your boss to automate customer acquisition real quick? Just be like, we don't need to meet. Just like, just go find me customers. Just see what he
Yeah.
says. Oh, sorry.
But yeah, I know but it is interesting. But yeah, I get it. Like I have more flexibility, than, yeah, you're right. Than like somebody in an enterprise because all of the permissions but I still think it's probably a cool example, even maybe outside of that. And maybe it just comes down to building an app a day, like using Claude Code.
Yeah. So yeah, I got to get that. So you can build apps so easily that are in React and local. It's when you want to do a mobile app. It's when you want to publish it to the iOS store, Android store. When you want to do a 3-tier application on a hosted provider, like that's where it gets more complex. You want security controls because it's publicly accessible. And that's where like most of the value lives, in my opinion. So that's the hard part. But I did want to ask you, so do you have access to on Cowork, the new dispatch feature or anything? Have they rolled it out, like, or channels? I don't know if channels would be for enterprise. And do they charge for it?
Let's see.
Like they keep rolling out these features, but it's all included in your plan. I'm like, is that
Yeah, I
smart?
think for us, yeah, I think, let's see, I'm trying to go through here. I have to go through and see where those would sit. Oh, I got to relaunch for update. So, but I know we're on like an allocated token per week because this morning I saw an engineer in our Slack channel said, "Hey, I burned through all my weekly tokens. Can I get a re-up?" Um,
Pointed at Amazon Bedrock,
so
bro. We got unlimited tokens.
yeah, the schedule. Oh, they have scheduled tasks. Yeah, that's probably been there for a minute though. Maybe I just didn't notice it. Um,
So I have the Claude
yeah, I have
desktop.
to go through. Yeah, I got the Cloud
So I got
desktop.
new chat, search, customized chat, projects, artifacts. That's all I got. Oh, Cowork's in the middle. Okay, that's what it was. Oh, I see dispatch. Look at
Yeah,
that.
hold on. Where is it at?
If you look up in the top, like chat Cowork code in the top title bar,
Mm-hmm.
and you click on Cowork, then it's on the left. So, all right, we should probably wrap soon since we're now like playing with toys. So, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, I don't have this ball. Yeah, I think I need to, like I said, I think anybody can join me. You can join me, but I'm going to force myself, I think, to do like one type of project a day, whether it's an app or some menial task, and then I'm just going to like document it like as my journey. And people might not find it intriguing. It may be, oh, I simply pulled some data from an Amplitude, database, but just to be like, hey, this is how simple it is, like versus me needing to go and log in and download an Excel
Yeah,
file.
that's cool. That makes sense. Yeah, I think I want to do that challenge with you for the next week, and then I think one of the things that we maybe need to think about is using something like Replit, right? Because that's kind of like they can build the app for you. I don't know what the pricing is there, but maybe that's something I'll try this week as well. So like a hosted service, maybe let's see if I can pull off a back end architecture with them. So but
Yeah. And I think the kicker on this is then the document, when I say documentation, but then like the summary or the review that you can post. So then you can post it to your Substack
oh
of
yeah,
like what I
yeah,
built. You know
yep,
what I'm saying? And here's where the other kicker comes in, because I brought this up with an engineer who just built this like trading bot. Um, I was like, oh, this is great. Like, can you tell me more? And he's like, I need to, write some stuff up. And I was like, why don't you just ask Claude? And he's like, oh, great idea. So like, you don't even need to write it up. Just say, hey, Claude, you know, publish a blog post for me on what we
yep,
just did. And it'll do it. Yeah. You maybe just have to do a few edits, but
nice. All right. We have our mission objective for the week. So we'll see y'all next week.